Yo, what's up? Hi, everybody. How's it going? So, good morning, Enzo. Galactic. Jenna. Hey, Johnny. What's good? Let's go. I'm not sure about the horns, mind. Not this morning, because this morning is a talk when I sort my hair out. And this is like everything I ever say is one of the biggest game-changing things that ever happened, right, in my music making career. At least it's one of them, and that is understanding about insight and analysis. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, the purpose of these morning sessions, the Monday morning sessions, is it supports my coaching groups. So all of the stuff. When we're in a coaching group, what I like to do is I like to spend the time creating music, okay? Sitting everybody down, going through the motions of what you need to do to make a great track, right? But also how to take the unnecessary pain out of the process so you can be as productive as you possibly can be, okay? I'll have to check that out. The artwork. I'm just seeing this flash up. So within that, okay, so you've got the music making and you've got the insights, right? And underpinning that is what we have, the conditions of success. So we've done habits, we've done environment. Now we're doing insight and analysis. So these all take a little bit of time. And I think it's just better if everybody just can turn in if you're interested, and we can just make these free sessions basically. And then it'll give you more of an insight on how I think about my music making, how I was coached, and how I do coach as well. And then if anybody's really interested in that, and you really want to make music and make an impression, then joining a coaching group and then making tons of music so you can release it is the way forward, really. Because when you become an artist, as I always say, music is worthless, right? Which doesn't sound good in terms of money. On it by itself, it's worthless, but it gets you opportunities. Yeah, that's what it does do. So, getting guitars, sitting here, doing this, all of the releases that I've done, all of the people that I've worked with have all happened because I was making music. If I hadn't been making music, none of these things would have happened. If you're a teacher and you're sort of writing and you're releasing music, your profile as a teacher goes up. You're an artist teacher. If you're a DJ and you're just kind of the local DJ, you become an artist DJ, and your monetary value actually goes up for those services. And then plus there's lots of other sort of ways you can make money out of your music as well in terms of career opportunities. So that's where we're up to with that. Now let's just have a look at what's going on in the chat. My hair getting done. Hi Perplexity, good to see you on here. Ready to create the best music you ever made in less time? Join one of Hutch's music coaching groups. Email. So there you go. You can email me, and we'll do a one-to-one Zoom call, and we'll talk about. We'll see where you are, and if you're a good fit for it, and if all goes well, then we can start. All right. So, God, this hair's mad. Seen that quiff on it? Right. Hold on. Right. I'm not touching it now. This will have to do. It's still a bit weird. I need to practice doing my hair with my headphones. Now it's got weird, like. Oh no, that reminds me of my physics teacher. No, that's not right. No, it's got to look good with the headphone. Right, there, we're sorted. Right, okay, so here we go. Insight and analysis. Thank you, Johnny. Right, insight and analysis. Are you ready for rock and roll? Here we go. Boom. Let's rock. Now, as I'm doing this, any questions you have, just say in the chat. Hopefully I'll catch it in the chat and we can have a discussion. So, because like the best way to do these things is as you relate to it, don't sit in silence. If you have an aha moment and then you want to ask some questions or you want to tell me, what sort of insight you've got from this, then that's great. But as this is an academic lecture, I thought we would start off with a quote. How about this, right? What do you think of this? You have a pen and paper. I can send you the slides, Enzo. But yes, pen and paper. Okay. So, if a man comes to the door of poetry untouched by the madness of the muse, believing that technique alone will make him a good poet, he is utterly eclipsed by the inspired madman. So there you go. Inspired by the madman. Very interesting quote, this. The muses, you've heard me talk about this before, the muses were the Greek gods who rewarded you with good ideas if you were prepared to sit down, okay, and do the work. So sitting down doing the work is the technique, isn't it? And the analytical side of what we're doing. And the madman is the insight, which sometimes we don't always trust. So I thought this was a very, very good sort of quote. So, put that in a bubble and remember it as I talk, okay? Believing that technique alone will make him a good poet is utterly eclipsed by the inspired madman. Okay. Now, let's have a look here. My slide's sorted. Okay, insight versus analysis in music production, trusting the creative mind. So the dual nature of music creation, logic versus instinct. And the tools may vary, but the mental process is universal. Today's focus, how insight analysis shape the music making process. So this is what we're going to really be talking about. And it's also, yes, I like the idea of like the logic versus the instinct, but actually this is more about how they kind of work together, although they can seem in opposition in certain aspects. I suppose the logic side takes you out of flow, okay, so you lose that kind of momentum whilst you're problem solving. But then the instinct comes after that. So that's something to bear in mind. And obviously, in terms of the tools varying, it doesn't matter about the tools, what you're doing, whether you're just using a guitar and a tape recorder, whether you're using Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase. It doesn't matter about what third-party plugins that you have. This is all to do with our brain, okay? This is a mental process, and the mental process that we have here is one that we share. It's all the same for all of us, okay? This is all about how our brains, well, it's like taking advantage of our natural brain thinking patterns. And everything here is, I know I'm mentioning music production quite a bit, and I suppose that a lot of that's due to when I first started my training, it was as a producer, as a coach. So like all of this was initially applied to that, but as I came into playing shred guitar again with Thomas, then I applied all of this to my progress helping me to progress playing guitar. And I must admit, this was nitrous oxide. Being just having the awareness of the alone of being analytical, and then having insight and knowing when to trust that. Especially think about improvisation. Think about learning to play scales and then thinking about improvising with the scales, and that dance between the formal learning, the very much the prefrontal cortex thinking, to the instinctive brain side, the older brain. So what we're going to remember is that our brains were developed apparently from the back to the front. And the back part of the brain that's like instinct or spear throwing, animal killing, hunting brain, the instinct, the fight or flight instinct brain, the part that's unconscious, that's the part that we probably use most when we're improvising. Okay, because it's unconscious thinking, it's just natural. It's like when we're driving a car, we don't think about, we can have a conversation with somebody who can drive the car because it's like instinct. And that's because we've learnt it so well that we can put those repetitive processes in the background of our brain, in the older brain, which is way more efficient than the front prefrontal cortex brain. An interesting one is chess masters. So in an MRI scan, when they have the brain scanned when they're playing chess, you would imagine that a lot of it would be prefrontal cortex, but apparently it's not. It's the older brain activity. So that's what we want. It's this dance of, when you're improvising, moving the information, that we've learned, practicing it to a point where it's just instinct and muscle memory. Just checking on the chat. Okay. Right, everybody listening. So, I'll skip on there. No. Okay. So what is analysis in music production? Okay. It's deliberate, focused, problem-solving, structured. It's harmony, it's mixing. Okay. So, analysis is just what it says there. It is the problem-solving side of things. A lot of things that we can do to actually help us be more insightful in our sessions is developing a good template that serves us, that takes care of all of the tasks that are repetitive, right, that don't require much creative interest, energy, that we do in every project. So that's one thing we can do to reduce the analysis or the unnecessary analysis in a project. But as I say here, often involves decision paralysis, over-editing. We've all experienced this, right? And the thing, I really suffered badly for this. So one thing I would do is, right, I'm going to make a dance track here. Okay, where do we start? Well, the most important thing in a dance track is going to be the kick drum. So I'd go sampling through kick drums. Oh, that one, that's the one. And I'd put it in and then start building a bass line to it. And then literally I'd get the bass line. Oh, that's not the right kick. Back through it. Right, that one. That's good. Right, it's not quite there. I'll just EQ it. Do a bit more. Oh, no, that's not the kick drum. It's got to be this other kick drum. And then, you'd build a track, then change the kick drum. Then I'd be like, oh, no, none of the track's working now. None of the parts are right, so I'll now go to a synth. I need to change the synth. Oh no, the bass line. If I can get the bass line to slightly change that to work with the kit, and then I'd try and find a preset to go with that kick. It's almost embarrassing when I talk about it now. But that would be the decision paralysis that I would go through, unable to make a decision, unable to. This is one of the things that I think is quite interesting. I don't have this problem in particular, although it can still creep in, is, we've got really cheap subscriptions, like Slate Digital stuff is amazing. I'm not using it for the minute. But again, or Plugin Alliance, even worse, right? Okay, you've got a choice of about 5 different channel strips, right, that all do the same thing. But which one? which one can I permanently use that'll fix everything? But which one's the best for drums? Which one's the best for guitars? Which is the best? Like this is like what we get into. And this is all coming from all these developers. What's interesting though is when you see like top dance producers who are very prolific, very successful, you don't see a lot of third-party stuff actually in their doors. It tends to be, I'll often see Ableton, and it'll just be basically Ableton native plugins, especially for the mixing side. I mean, obviously, they'll have, they'll use Serum, they'll use all these other things, but it tends to be that they're using those, they're using native plugins. And why? Why are they doing that? It's because they don't have to make extra decisions, because they believe that the idea that they have is strong enough and that will cut through sort of any sort of downfalls of slightly not good quality music. That's another problem that kind of leads on to paralysis, is because that decision paralysis is also based on us wanting particular results that extend into the future. And the problem is the future is uncertain. And as humans, we don't like that. That makes us uncomfortable. It can make us be in mortal fear for our lives. Even from music, it's the same chemicals that get released. If this track is horrible, I'm a bad person. If I release it, people will think I'm horrible. These kind of things. I've been through all of this. At the end of the day, we need to come back to this process and look at the foundations of how we're making decisions, and come up with a set of things that we stick to. Analysis can break the flow and lead to creative block. And again, I think I've highlighted a lot of things. Which decision should I make? And that's because we're traveling in the timeline into the future. And because the future is uncertain, that causes us problems. Now, you probably know what I'm going to say. And as producers, if we're going to make art, we have to embrace uncertainty. That's it. It's a jump into the darkness. Okay, we just don't know, and we have to be open to all possibilities. On the plus side, if we don't do that, we're not making art. And I say the plus side because there's a definite distinction of what the mindset should be. If we're not making art, we're designing. So we see this a lot in dance music, right? And people even do this, like hip hop production, really bad. I've seen producers just like get a track, somebody else's track, load it into the DAW, right, and go kick drum, copy the kick drum, copy the bass line, copy everything, right, and then make significant changes to it that would just push it out of copyright. And that's like, oh, that's what and then that's fine. That's design. It's not making art. We're not extending into the uncertainty of future. We're just basically plagiarizing the facts. But it does guarantee a certain amount of results, doesn't it? For us to be in front of this process, to be leading the way, to finding things that are unexpected, just the word unexpected means there's uncertainty. There isn't going to be certainty there. So analysis is the conscious mind working on the problem. And that's okay. We do get stuck, right? And sometimes we can't then actually solve the problem. There are a number of things we can do, right? Is so like one of the processes I do, like it served me very well this very early on. What was it called? It was called I see if it called It was the Momentum Avalanche or something like that. It was like a ridiculous title. I'll remember what it was because I have like a whole cartoon of this. But basically, what it is, you when you write a piece of music, you do a splurge. So you make a piece of music, and what you're trying to do is you're not focusing on quality, you're focused on quantity. Okay, quantity of ideas within this composition, and it's put together very, very quickly. And you're not editing it any process. What comes out comes out. You listen to it in 7 days, right? And after you listen to it in 7 days, usually you get a nice surprise, right? And you'll have a lot of these ideas, and you'll pick the best ones. If you haven't got time to do that, and you have a deadline, so you write your music, you do that first session, you write something. And then what you do is you listen back to it no more than 2 times, okay? And we use a direct listening exercise, which is something we can go through later, but other people on here who are used to this channel will know that what direct listening is, right? It's just being able to listen to music. It's a particular technique that we use to quieten down our analytical mind, to quieten down that negative circuitry, because it's very difficult to listen to your own music without being judgmental. So we need to not be judgmental, but we need to listen to the actual music itself, because that is the data. Okay, that's the hard fixed data that isn't changing. What we think and feel about our music is constantly changing for good and bad. Can't remember what I was talking about now. Oh yes, I can. So when we're thinking about sort of the process, and we've listened to our track, what you do is you just write down 3 things you're going to try in your new session, right? So you've got 3 things, and it might be write a second, like motif, chord progression, develop the melody, things like that. But it'll be, whatever you do, it'll be concrete binary, so it'll be a yes/no answer at all times. Even in the very beginning of a creative process, we want to be a concrete binary as much as we possibly can. And what you'll do in your session is you'll work on that very first sort of action, right? And what will happen when you do that one action is a lot of insight will happen suddenly, and this is why it's called the avalanche, right? There'll be tons of ideas fly into your head, okay, about what to do next. And I encourage everybody, when this happens, to do those ideas, because you'll have abundance of ideas just off by that triggers just off doing this one task. And what you do, right, is you just do them. And if something doesn't work, you don't go into a phase of analysis. You just go, it doesn't work, and you move on to the next idea, because we have an abundance of ideas that are coming from insight, from working on this first action that comes from solving some sort of music problem. Because your brain's still working in the background on the problem, this is why. When those ideas dry up, you just go to the next thing on your list, and you do that, and then other ideas happen, and you keep repeating the process 3 times. Once your 3rd time is done, that's the end of your session. And I can guarantee you'll be finishing a track easy every week. I mean, at the height of it, I was like knocking an EP out in a week, right, and releasing it by the Friday. Yeah, and some of those EPs had 5 tracks. This is when I was doing tech house. So, an interesting process. It certainly works. It's not the best process. It's not as good as using something like what we do in the coaching group, where you're using the music machine, because the automatic music making machine is a system of capturing all of these ideas that allows you to catalogue them at various points of the creative process through sort of divergent and the convergent thinking process. Okay. Right, is everybody following this? I know this isn't shredding. We've gone quiet in the chat. Show me a sign of life, so I know I'm not talking to myself. This is my favourite stuff. Excellent. I like to hear that. Yes. Okay, Jenna, Enzo, you're still here. That's good. I'm sure everybody else is. Just testing. I don't have to put anybody in detention. You don't have detention like this. We're all adults, aren't we? Oh, there's Galactic. You're all right. So insight comes from analysis, right? This is like very important. The brain continues working in the background even after you stop. Insight is post-analytical subconscious. Very cool, that, isn't it? Connections emerge after deep work. So the composer always walks away stuck. This is the example I gave. Say chorus and returns breakthrough melody, right? So really, what happens here, and it happens time and time again, all right? Oh, there you go, VA Johnny. All the time, every time this happens, okay, you work on a piece of music, you're completely stuck, okay? And you reach what psychology would say the impasse. So you're just not going any further forward, okay? Now, as I say, the avalanche technique that I talked about, you kind of skirt around this, don't you? Because you just go to the next thing. You've always got a job to do, and after you run out of that job and there's no more insight, that's the end of your session, you know? Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to go walking around your music project, muting, unmuting tracks, soloing tracks, looking for trouble, okay? Because you'll get it and you'll ruin your track, you know? So when we reach that point and we feel like that's a sign that the session's over, because sometimes it's very difficult if you've got no actions left to go beyond that. That's where you're in this danger zone of like doing something that actually ruins the track. Okay, and I'll come to that in a bit. Things, unhelpful thinking that destroys everything. So we can appreciate that the ideas have ran out. That's our finish of that particular flow session. And by the way, flow you can chain together. You can be in flow as many times as you want in the day. It isn't magical. It happens whenever you want it to happen, when you know. Listen, right, about flow, right, because I have a wonderful life because of flow, and I'm in flow, right, all of the time. I'm in flow now doing this. I'll be in flow when I go to work. Every single session I'll do, there'll be some point that I'm in flow. It doesn't exhaust me. It's not like magical fairies appear, okay, once every month. I'm not, hey man, I'm not in the zone. I'm always in the zone. Why? Because of the muse, the Greek goddesses. They're wonderful. Because I'm prepared to sit down and do the work. Remember that. If I sit down and do the thing, insight comes. Flow comes. And all these things, you'll notice these talks, right, are very neatly kind of connected to this music making process, to the music making machine. It all ties in together, this learning, this one solid idea that works. So, yes, your brain's continuing to work. And so the story that I do there, hi Lucky Lan, how are you doing? So the story is I'm working on a piece of music. I am now stuck. I've got no more jobs to do. There's this one thing that's bothering me, but I can't figure it out. So I'm going to stop and off I go. Probably go shopping with the missus, pushing the basket round Sainsbury's. Actually, not saying no. Very rarely do I go to Sainsbury's, but Sainsbury's at Heaton is very, very good here. So I do like to go there. But I'm more of a Marks and Spencer's Waitrose person, to be fair. I'm very fussy when it comes to food. But anyway, it's like Thomas keeps saying when he's on about kebabs, Hutchell wants scallops. So you'll be in the supermarket pushing your trolley around, and then suddenly the idea will come to you of what to do, right? And you have to write that idea down. You have to remember what that idea is. It's very important. And you'll get a shot of dopamine and you'll feel great. And you go, that is it. That's the idea. That's how I'm going to solve the problem. Insight is post-analytical subconscious. So that's what you're experiencing. Connections emerge after deep work. Now, this leads us on to here, the dopamine trap. The initial excitement of the dopamine when insight strikes. So that's what we've had. We've had that initial strike of dopamine, but we're miles away from home. And I'm in the shop with the missus, right? And now I'm not very good at shopping because I don't know what I want, ever. and I tend to stand about. In fact, if we're in a shopping mall, it's really bad because I like, she'll go in to a shop and I'll stand out. Usually I'll stand outside or just sit down, and I'm a bit like a computer. I'll just power down. I'll just wait till I'm needed. What do you think of this? All right, yeah, it's really good. That's my shopping. But anyway, the initial excitement of when I have a dopamine, I'm like, I need to get back to the house. I've cracked it. The initial excitement of dopamine when insight strikes, yes. So we're feeling great, so I think we solved it. But the energy may fade away when returning to the door. This is the problem. So I used to experience this all of the time really badly, but I was completely unaware of what it was. So those of you who don't know this, right, I have a master's, right, in this weird thing called music and fine art. I decided sort of when I was kind of felt that rock and roll might come to an end, that I should quickly go and become academic. So luckily for me, I didn't have to do a degree. I went straight onto a master's program that was a scholarship that was funded, and I got paid to actually be there. Because what I was doing is they never really had, and the guys there, the lecturers, thought it was really, really interesting. And I was really good actually, because a lot of the lecturers that I had were very high profile artists. It was brilliant. But anyway, I would set up these ridiculously conceptual ideas for music. And a lot of the time I was borrowing visual theory and bringing it into sound art, into music, basically. It was like that 2 years of my life was, hey man, far out. It was like, I don't know, just like crazy. But really good for conceptual thinking. And often I would go, that's an amazing idea. That's what I need to do. I'm going to be a famous artist now. And then I'd run back to the studio to do whatever that was. And then I'd just think, God, that was a shit idea. I've totally what was that? What was I thinking? Okay. And the problem there was when I was returning to the studio, that feeling of excitement, the physical feeling of excitement, that dopamine hit wasn't there. And that kind of tricked me thinking, actually, because the physical feeling wasn't there, that then therefore the idea was shit because it wasn't giving me that physical feeling every time. I didn't have that excitement. So we've got to be aware of that you will get that initial excitement, okay? But when we get back to the studio, it won't be there. But that insight comes from the phase of analysis that we have had. So it has some truth into it. There is some very reliable data in that. And the way around that is you have to act upon that idea ruthlessly and do it. You write it down and you make it into a concrete binary action. It's yes, no, hard to vary. Okay? Examples of a concrete binary action is the melody must go up, that a melody must go up tone, tone, semitone, and then come down. If it was a mixing thing, the snare drum's too loud, turn it down. Something that wouldn't be, that would be very, varied, would be something like, the groove isn't right. Now, you could give me your track and say, Tim, the groove isn't right. Well, where is it not right? How do you work with that? It could be 1,000,001 things, but you could say the groove is not right because every 16th high needs some swing. It needs to be swung as a starting point by 55%. Okay? So you can be sort of binary, but you might get there and it might not be 55. You might think, do it by eye, but you get the idea, right? So yes, we wrongly doubt the idea because the emotional high is gone. Lack of dopamine, lack of value in the idea. So we know that isn't true. The lack of dopamine doesn't mean the lack of value in the idea. We've had the value of dopamine. We haven't got that now, but the value of the idea is still there. It is valid because, I repeat, it comes from analysis. Why we must trust insight. Insight often holds the most original material. It bypasses the internal critic and taps into the emotional intuition. Test the idea before disregarding it. Give it a real chance. So that's exactly what I'm saying about the avalanche process, or the momentum process, is basically all the time you're testing ideas, right? Because music is very much in line with science, okay? In that we're just thinking of an idea, we don't know if it's going to work, there's uncertainty, and we set up an experiment. Just with us, it's music, it's an instrument getting plugged in, or we're playing. But we're literally, if you think of your music and almost distance yourself from it, it becomes a very, very scientific sort of experiment. And I really strongly suggest that people do that. It's like separating you from what the process is and trying to have an overview of it. I think one thing that kind of helped me was, and I think this comes from Buddhism, is when you're thinking back to the brain, the prefrontal cortex and the older brain. In Buddhism, they say it's like an elephant and a rider, and then you have an emperor, okay? So the elephant is like the older brain. The rider is like the prefrontal cortex, controlling everything. And then the emperor is the impartial oversight, viewing everything and informing the rider of where to correct any movement, okay, in what directions to go. And that's very similar to the creative process. So we need to be the emperor on the elephant, overviewing the process, and then informing what will be the prefrontal cortex of what course corrections we need, which is then carried out by the older brain. A very interesting look at the process, and I'm sure you probably haven't heard that one. But anyway, massively helped me. And again, yes, we always want to be in a flow state. So being able to trust that insight and knowing that it comes from analysis will always kind of get you there. But it is interesting, the other part of insight actually holding the original material. What it means is we're using the subconscious as well. And the subconscious is where the limitless possibilities of ideas are. So if you think about it, we have like the conscious level of thinking. So in other words, I'm going to start a track, I'm going to do the drums, here's a drum beat, you can almost hear it and you just do that, right? That's the conscious level of thinking. But as we get into the process and we start playing melodies and start exploring, then we start getting into the, out of that kind of known conscious thinking, and then other things start to happen, like almost appear from nowhere. And that's where all the originality is. And that's another thing, it's insight, isn't it? And we have to then trust those ideas are worthy, because it's pulling from our whole big library of musical experience. So we need to trust that. Anyway, let's go on to the next slide. Flow state and the subconscious. So I've touched on this, following a sweet spot between challenge and skill. Okay. So I think there's, like I've mentioned them later on, there's a few psychologists, Stephen Kotler, and I can't even pronounce his name, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi guy, two experts on basically flow, okay? So the sweet spot between challenge and skill. So there's this thing called skill to challenge ratio, which is very, very important. So I can't remember who quoted it, but I have got to think, I've got a feeling it's Csikszentmihalyi, that for you to have a sensible challenge, okay, it needs to be within 4 to 7% out of your comfort zone. We do need to be out of our comfort zone, but word of warning, if you go too far out of your comfort zone, okay, you will disengage from the process. It will become too hard. If it is too easy, you'll become bored and disengage from the process. So we need to sort of aim just slightly above what we're capable for, okay? So that's an important thing. So skill to challenge ratio to keep us engaged. Now that could be bringing in possibly a new bit of software, okay, to freshen things up. If you want to do that, it could be bringing in one new technique into your session that you're wanting to try out. It could be improvising a 4-bar solo. So it's kind of up to you, but it's in what you need to know is that it's not massively out of your you don't want to be massively out of your comfort zone, right? Or you'll drown. You'll be out of your depth. True creativity often emerges when we're not thinking what we're doing. So this is it. Like all of my tracks that are good, right? I mean, it's hard to like any of my tracks, right? Because it's just like that's being an artist. I'm on to the next thing, right? But tracks that I get surprised at, I think, wow, that's like, what did I do that? That's amazing. That's like really good. It comes from the subconscious. Happens all the time when I'm splurging. I'll splurge ideas and I'm in the session going, oh God, this is crap. Why am I doing this? This is nonsense. And then I'll be in flow and I'll just do it. And I'll think, don't think much of that. But because of the process is do not listen to your music for 3 days. Okay. What inevitably happens is when I come back to listen to that music, I tend to think, wow, did I do that? That's amazing. Hutch, you're a genius, which is totally different from what I was thinking and feeling in the session. 2 things are happening there. When I'm listening back to the music 3 days later or 7 days later, I have forgotten about the physical and mental feeling that I was getting in that session. So I was only listening to the music of what it actually was. When we're creating music, we are making music, we respond to the music, but often we're also judging ourselves by our thoughts and feelings. There are 2 sets of emotions there at any one time when we're in the process. What we think as an artist in the process is highly unreliable. Okay? We just have to go with the flow because 2 sets of emotions, what we think on reviewing what we're doing, and also what the music is trying to express in terms of its emotion. The best analogy for this is when you're listening to that music with and you've got a lot of thoughts and feelings about your process and what you're doing. It's trying to listen to the music. It's like trying to, if you drank orange juice, it's like trying to taste orange juice after you've had mouthwash. The mouthwash is your feelings and thoughts and feelings, and the orange juice is the music. We just want the orange juice, and we don't want to ignore those thoughts and feelings, and that's when we're in flow. We have to trust the subconscious. Okay? Now, obviously, those thoughts and feelings will have some truth into them. So what do we do with that? So this is why we have wins, problems, and opportunities. And I did do a video on this where I'm sitting in my living room talking about my process, wins, problems, and opportunities. Now, you can apply this to everything that you do. Okay? So after that session, almost as a free write, you always write down your wins, right? Because normally human beings were negatively programmed but just want to get to the problems, but you need to have your wins because that makes you feel good. You think well, there was like a lot of positive things that happened in that session, and then you're geared up to face any sort of like negativity or problems. But problems aren't negative, right? Problems are to be embraced, to be enjoyed, because problems create new knowledge. How else do you improve as a musician if you're not how do you get better not fixing problems? So it makes total sense to just go, I've got problems, let's fix them. And you get into this lovely exchange of having, fixing really shitty problems and having amazingly good problems, okay? Like a good problem would be I can play like Yngwie Malmsteen now, but the problem is I'm bored of it. What do I do next? That's a great problem, isn't it? Because the world technically got all this technique. Oh, I could do a bit of fusion. I could do a bit of whatever, So problems, we want problems. Problems create new knowledge. So then we get to opportunities. And that's when the excitement starts because, again, concrete binary, very actionable things on a list that you can do. Okay, there's a whole skill to writing lists, actually, which I do sort of in my coaching, based around an Eisenhower matrix. when he was planning battles, he had his Eisenhower matrix, and it's very good to use in music, believe it or not. Helps you make decisions. But anyway, when you get your opportunities and you start tackling those problems and writing multiple solutions to problems, you get excited because you know what you're doing. In order to be successful, right? To be successful, you need to know what to do next. Whether it's right or wrong, it's a movement, an action, and there's a cause and effect, and that effect produces data, which you can then course correct and modify from. And that's how we get better. It's not like a straight line. Creativity, getting better at your instrument, it isn't a straight line. You veer off it, and there are different sort of obstacles in the way, and you think, oh, well, then maybe that's not the path. I'll go over here, and that's not it. But constantly, you're kind of weaving about. Okay. Oh, there's Angus. Hi, Angus. How are you doing? I'm in lecture mode at the minute, as you can see. I hope you're still there. Oh, there's Mac. Hi, Mac. Right, Enzo, I'm going to come back on the chat for this. I'm going to keep going, get through this. It's quite a good question. That's quite a good question. And I think by the end of this, you might have an answer yourself. I'd be interested to hear what it is. Right. Tips to encourage insight. Work deeply, then detach. Schedule. Intentional breaks. So you've probably... Oh, the missus has got it, right? But I always have a timer on my desk, right? And I always use a timer. So often I'll splurge and I'll set the timer to 10 minutes because I'm trying to beat the clock. That's what I'm trying to do. And that helps me because there's a time limit. It helps me get into flow. You see, flow state actually relies on having... what would I say? Having consequences, and the consequences is the session runs out and you're trying to beat that clock by producing an idea. So using a clock makes absolute total sense, okay? Capturing ideas immediately and jotting them down. You need to, whenever you do start an idea, you need to record everything that you do. And it doesn't matter how bad it is, it's just the ideas to analyze later, to then work on and then move that idea forward. When you're in the coaching group with me, this is why we have like a music machine, because it tracks it tracks the divergent and convergent thinking. In other words, divergent thinking, we're thinking everything is possible, and it's an additive process, and we're building a track, and we're trying not to be judgmental, and we're trying to limit the editing, okay? When we get into the convergent process, we're editing and mixing, mastering, and then it's done, okay? So in other words, when you follow this process, what it does is it removes the burden of convergent thinking, mixing, with the divergent thinking. So another great analogy for sort of divergent, convergent thinking is, well, here's a scenario, right? People will do this, and it's sort of like what Enzo's saying about clips, right? This is one disadvantage with the clips is it gets you to think in a loop, right? So you'll do a loop of music and you think, great, here's my 16 bars, this is great. Oh, this track is going to be amazing. I'm going to make it more amazing now because... And it isn't finished. You've only got one section of a track. I'm now going to mix it. So you start mixing it. You think, oh, this is amazing. This is going to be the best track in the whole entire world, right? And then what you do is it tightens you up because you think, now, any move that I do to this, any section I make, any parts that I add, I'm going to have to be really careful because I could ruin it. You see where the problem is? And that is like, so you start mixing it, you start doing that, you've brought in the convergent thinking. So it's like braking and accelerating at the same time. The two things don't really, really mix. To the point where when you're doing a session, you tend to think like all of the sessions that you'll do will be in a day, unless there's a gap of lunch or whatever, will be sort of that divergent thinking. And then once you've had a little bit of a break, you can go on to more convergent things, but it's never really a good idea to mix the two things, I find, in a session. It doesn't work. You just need a tiny bit of time just to kind of reset your head to then go into the more convergent mixing stuff. However, if you've got deadlines, this still is going to give you an edge. All right. But what you do have to do, and I have to stress this, is you have to record everything and you have to catalogue everything so you can listen back to it at a later date. All right. That means bouncing the audio out. And it also means labeling and filing your project away sensibly. Yeah, so don't expect every idea to land, but respect the process. Now, what that actually means is our creativity, our ideas are, and you have to trust me on this, because I guarantee it, are in abundance. Okay? You don't have to, you might have an amazing idea, but there'll be another idea. It'll be just as amazing or better than that idea. There is no end to it. And if you're doing sort of these processes that I'm talking about, you come on the coaching group and, you start running a machine, you won't ever not have ideas. I mean, I think most of you guys have seen me in the studio when I'm working. I just work and it happens, doesn't it? It's like, but it's not by chance. It's because I'm trained to do it. This all is through training. A lot of it you can do yourself. That's the video for the thing, the wins, problems, opportunities. Remember to smash the like button. How many more of these have I got? Let's have a look. Creative confidence and abundance. So there we go. I've just touched on that. The ideas are infinite. Creativity is renewable. Don't hoard or overjudge ideas before trying them. The best producers are prolific, not perfect. So remember that. Prolific, not perfect. We know the story about the ceramics class, don't we? And the teacher says, right, group one, splits the class into two groups. Group one, you're going to make pots, but you have to make as many pots as you possibly can, right? Just make pots and make shitloads of them. And then he tells the other group, you've got to make a perfect one. You make a perfect pot. I want to see one perfect pot. Comes back to them later on. And the first group, basically, they have lots of crappy little pots, but as they start kind of building up speed and momentum, they start there is no perfection, but they start getting better and more ornate. And by the end, they're quite ornate and quite finished and looking really good. So he's like, wow, great guys. And then he looks at the other group and he went, right, where's the perfect pot? And all they had was a pile of clay and some theory. So there we go. And I think that resonates very, very well to our processes at times in the studio. When we are going for perfection, it slows us right down. Okay. There's a little game that we're going to play at some point called Design to Discovery. And this is going to be an important thing. It's probably going to be another talk. Design and discovery. Very important to know those two different things because there is something there with design. There's the perfection is there because it has to be like that thing. When we're making art, it doesn't. It's unquantifiable. Which is probably one of the reasons people say art is merely abandoned and never finished, because how do you know when it's going to be finished? All right, summary. Insight is not random. It's post-analysis. Intuition. Trusting insight fuels spontaneity and flow. Detach, return, trust, create without fear. I like that. And there's your references. John Cleese is a very well-known British comedian, and he's the expert on flow. and he's paid for a lot of scientific research into it. There's Mihail Csikszentmihalyi, the word I can't actually say, so apologies to him, but I do have dyslexia. And there we go. Now, hey, I know it wasn't the usual shredding, but I might do some shredding tonight. Oh, you're in Nicaragua. Well, very good. What's the weather like, Angus? Yeah, probably right. But higher rats. Yeah, I see what you mean when you said this can be applied to all other aspects in life. So remember, I work for the health service here in the UK, therapeutic musician, and this is why it's so popular, okay? Because music's such a great way to address problems, isn't it? It's also a great way to express emotion without actually disclosing stuff. In fact, I had a job for a while in a very high security prison. So it'd be the equivalent here to max secure in America. And part of my job was to help reduce self-harm to allow with music. So, and if you use music, it allows people, because you can't be yourself in that environment, okay? You don't want to show any emotion, and you can lose complete contact with emotion, which just isn't good. Music is a great way to express those emotions, but without looking weak, you know? So it's very beneficial in that environment. And then there's all my other work. So yes, solving problems through music. And when you think of the conditions of success, learning how to train your mind to focus on a task, any task, not just music. How to have your environment set up in a particular way that serves your purpose. So it could be setting up your kitchen for cookery, right? Okay. If you're somebody in long-term rehabilitation, it helps that muscle of thinking, doesn't it? What we're doing now, understanding insight and analysis and how we can use those things. Other conditions of success are, dealing with fear. That's a very important one, isn't it? How do we overcome fear? And music is a great way to have some sort of graded exposure to that. You're understanding how you can come over those sorts of emotions. Overcoming boredom, so not giving up because you're bored. How do we push through that to become amazing at what we're doing? So many people, I'm bored, I've done it, there's nothing left to do now, I'll stop doing it, right? That's not what, the elite, professional, amazing people think, they push through that boredom by finding other things. Understanding community, how do you, being able to socially and economically fit in to a crowd, that's part of it as well. So these are all the conditions of success. And then, of course, you have the skills. And the skill is, me playing guitar, improvising. That's, if we look at it like a pizza, that's like one slice. But all of these other things are as equally important. Hi, VA Johnny. This was great. Thank you. That's wonderful. The rhythm of life, when it beats steady, things go much smoother. So Enzo I think I answered the question. Would that make Clip's view less favourable? Technically it would, because actually if you can see the arrangement, you can progress the track more easily. Having said that, clips are very convenient and I quite like them, because you can use them like a performance you can loop. So you can dance between the two things. I think, like, in terms of just getting a track together quickly, I think just going in the arrange page is actually the best way to do it. But often you'll see me sort of in the clips because I'm live looping or performing or something like that. So, yes. But then you can have your DAW set up in a particular way. So, like, my latest DAW setup is more like what I used to do when I used to just write, like, tons of music. Like, the big difference with that is, like, each drum is on a separate channel. So I've got kick separate, snare, which is great for when you're doing electronic music and it's electronic drums. Not so great for live drums, but it's a great way because you can easily build variation like that just in the arrangement. All right, let's have some questions, and you can talk about anything, but preferably about what we've just been through. I'll put the slides up on Discord. I mean, the other thing is that's beyond me is they don't, like, nobody taught me this stuff at school, and they should have, shouldn't they? So we do have any questions? So Enzo, yeah. Now, so Enzo, there's probably like overthinking actually already happening there. What you need to do is you just need to make music. That's it. Just do it and test. Through my testing, I find clips. If I use clips, it makes it more difficult to come up with an arrangement on the fly or parts that like integrate with tension and release, because it's just one lot of clips, another lot of clips. It's like section. It's a blocky way to do something. So if I was to do, there are different flavors of splurges, right? If I'm just going to make tons of ideas that are just like 8/16 bars, right? And I want to make, I don't know, like sometimes I'll do like an idea explosion, and I'm going to write 10 minutes. I'm going to write as many ideas as I possibly can. So I've done these before, right? Then I would use the clips view because I can just go bang, 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 and I can individually bounce them out, right? That's one way of doing it. And you can also vary the tempo. You can pre-program in tempos on Ableton. So you can do it that way. So in one project, I might write like 10 different ideas. And then just basically, when I pick one of those ideas, I just save that project as like a different name and then delete all the ideas that I'm not doing and then work on that. So that's one flavor of doing it. But then you can have, like, Riding Out, most of that album was wrote through structure splurging. And structure splurging was literally, I mean, it's not exact, but I used the structure of The Shape of You by Ed Sheeran. So a lot of those songs follow The Shape of You, believe it or not, because pop structures are great. So that was the initial kind of thing for it, loosely speaking, and then obviously that structure changed. So I would have in my splurge The Shape of You. You couldn't see, like, the track wasn't there. I just marked it out as in, intro. So I'd have like a MIDI channel at the top, and then I'd have like a little block of MIDI that would say, just for the name, intro, and then you'd have verse, pre-chorus, chorus, a little bit of a break, down, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, middle eight, and then what I would do is in the structure splurge, I would quickly just block everything in, and then go, right, well, this is the intro, like I'll work on the chorus, or I'll use for the verses, I'll just use the chorus bass line, put that in, and you quickly build like a picture like that, and then you can quickly arrange within those sections as well while you're there. So it's really good for keeping the momentum going. So I think maybe being in the arrange, when I think about it, is overall quicker, but clips are fun. Yes, I have read The Steal Like an Artist. And stealing like an artist is perfectly fine, by the way. Just plagiarizing isn't very good. Okay, but stealing's fine. And when I say stealing, for the guitarists here, when we're talking about stealing, is like, like tapping. Like, where did that come from? Well, we're not sure. There was people in the 50s doing tapping. Where did they get it from? It's quite a natural thing to think about, isn't it? But Eddie Van Halen was the person who made it famous, but he did it in an entirely different way to the guy who first did it. Could that be stealing? Well, you could say it's stealing, but it's like stealing like an artist. So he took an idea and a concept and he repurposed it for his environment. And that's like what we want to be doing. So that's a good point, Angus. Stay like an artist is great. It's on Audible. And very important to know what staying like an artist is. All right. Let's have some more questions. I'm just moving so you know I haven't frozen. I forgot about Ed Sheeran's form. I haven't been using Clips. Was just curious. Yeah, I mean, Clips is something you can go to if you're bored. Like, if you're bored in your process, I'll just use Clips today. Freshens. You know, when I was talking about freshening things up, just use Clips. And then quickly move from Clips into your Arrange. You can go between the two things. You're not stuck in one or the other. We can go from Arrange into Clips and work on things there. We can take Clips immediately out and stick them into the Arrange. Or you can just go into the Arrange. But the thing is what we've got to be careful of is just stopping overthinking everything. We want to be doing. If we do, we create problems that are unique to ourselves. That well, they might not be unique to ourselves, but we'll be creating problems that we're actually experiencing that therefore need addressing. And then when you have a problem, then it makes sense to then research how you're going to fix that problem. Whether you use ChatGPT, that's quite a popular thing, or you go on YouTube and you look there. What doesn't work is if, say, because like Enzo's saying, people would do this, they'll go, right, which is better? All right. Session view or arrange view. And then there'll be lots of like YouTube videos of people going, if you're not starting in your session view, you're doing it wrong. Follow these 5 steps for maxing out your session view and build, it's just like somebody shouting for attention and like trying to fix a problem that you haven't had. It's just an opinion and it's not true to your experience. Your experience of what you face in your session, that is true. And that's what you need to work with. And that is how you get exponentially better. You can tell Alan Holdsworth thought like this, just naturally. That's why he's so unique. Because he just didn't. I mean, what were his influences? He would have had, he's had jazz influences, but he went so much beyond there. And I think he went beyond there because it was his own personal journey that was unaffected by other people's opinions. Because to do music like that, you have to have a strong conviction. You have to have a strong idea of what your path in mastery is. And that comes across very, very strongly. I mean, whether you like his music or not, certainly that foundation process that was going on feels like what I'm talking about now, is that he would play, he would experience problems, and the problems that he was experiencing in terms of where he wanted to go, he was then just addressing those. I don't think he was listening to people going, Alan, that jazz is good, but you can't play country. Maybe you should spend time learning some country. Be good at that. What if somebody asks you to play country at a wedding? You see, there's a whole load of problems that you shouldn't fix. Having a jazz background naturally helps promote that way of thinking. So thinking of individuality, exploring, experimenting. Not having limitations, no rules. Have you seen The Mighty Bush? Having said that though, Enzo, jazz is highly formulaic. I can't even say the word, is it? Like, sometimes when I go, right, how do I deal with this thing I'm experiencing? And I go on, and then I listen to some proper jazz guys on YouTube, and they're talking about changing, playing over changes. It's like going to see your bank manager about your mortgage. I go, right, I'm going to really concentrate here. This is important. And then I just go, oh. It's like, and I'm thinking about other things. Shopping with the missus. Where's my daughter's teddy? What am I doing? I'm hungry. Capturing ideas and noting them for later reference is definitely a good tool. Even humming an idea into your phone, if you're out and about, it is good, absolutely. And then you review them later, and then act on them. Well, I've enjoyed today's lecture. It's been really good lecture or discussion. I've done a lot of talking. Playing standards helps soloing over changes a lot. Learn rules, just break them. That's good. Good point, Enzo. I've never been into kind of playing standards, though. I must admit. That bit's missing. There you go. Well said, Enzo. Totally agree. But what I would say is, what if you just want to break the rules straight away? I'll give you an example. So, for 8 years old, classical guitar lesson. I wanted to be up the top of the fretboard because that's where Jake E. Lee was when he was playing with Ozzy. He was up here, and I was trying to figure things out. My classical guitar teacher almost told me, it was like, no, you're not doing that. We don't go past the third fret till grade 3. Well, that was I'm not waiting till grade 3 to get past the third fret. Come on. But if I'd followed his advice in terms of, stick to the rules and don't break them, that was like suppressing my creativity. It was like saying, stop being creative. You've got to do this first. You've got to learn these rules. So, yes, rules are important. Guidelines. They're not rules, they're guidelines, right? But you have to, if you want to break them there and then, break them, because that's insight. That's coming from a phase of analysis. I would never go, I'm not doing that because I haven't learned how to do this. This is very important, Enzo, because this is parts of zones of experience. Remember zones of experience? Let me find it. Here somewhere. Oh God! Just when you want it, you can't find it. wonder where it's gone. Oh, right, I'll figure it out. I'll need to find it. But zones of experience basically says, when you look at that, one of the areas when I'm coaching people that people get stuck on is that kind of mindset of skills. I haven't learned this, so I can't do X. As artists, what you've got to remember at the top of, so it's like a flow chart, zones of experience, and it has all the areas where we get stuck in our thinking, in our knowledge, in our skill development. But at the top of it is, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot, is our connection to the world. The most important thing is us connecting with the outside world, isn't it? And what we don't want to do is get into this sort of thing where I'm not going to make that connection because I haven't done these things, because it just goes on forever. You'll never ever be complete or fulfilled. So what we have to do is make sure that we're moving up the zones of experience and always connecting. I'll find the chart and then I can explain it a lot better, because then when you see it, it's a lot easier. But it's like kind of the mental model I use when I'm coaching, at least one of them. It tends to be that. And then I'll use a framework called Thinking Environment. So when you do one-to-one sessions, that's like sort of what's underpinning my questioning to an artist when I coach them. So any more questions? In the meantime, as I say, there are coaching groups available to join. There's also one-to-one coaching, although this gets like really booked up fast all the time. It's like digging a hole in sand. It's very popular at the minute. So if anybody is interested in a one-to-one session, it is 1 hour long and it costs $75. So an hour's coaching session for $75. So if you're stuck, you don't know where to start, you're procrastinating, you want to improve sort of how you're thinking about what you're doing, then one-to-one coaching is definitely for you. We can do that, and I know that it will, everybody benefits massively from that coaching session. So if you want to do that, we can do that. And it's very therapeutic as well. It's just a nice chat. I ask you structured questions and you answer them, and you will come up with solutions to all of your problems and stuff to try out, and everybody leaves excited, including me. Or, as I mentioned, the coaching group. So this conditions of success. We've done insight and analysis today. We have done environment and habits. Getting into the kind of hard practical making music, that's done on a Zoom call in a group of 4. I guess trying to apply saved ideas to the guilt at the later stage can deem to be a challenge as well, but it's all a joy. It is, absolutely. So anyway, thank you for watching, everybody. I mean, I'm coming up to a close. I really appreciate everybody being on here and listening. As I say, making the connection. This is me making my connection to the world. This is one of my connections, is sharing some of these ideas so our music community can grow. And also, as Jenna highlighted, these conditions of success are important because it's how you're thinking. You can apply this to everything that you do in life, and it's made career-wise for me a massive boost. Seriously, I can't thank my coach enough for all the help he's got, because terms financially, career happiness, it all comes from this, and fundamentally I'm able to support my family through doing something I absolutely love doing. You're not working if you're doing what you love, and it's absolutely true, and I just get to play music all the time, and I'm so grateful and humbled by it. So I think if I don't come in too exhausted, I think there'll be. I think I'll get this out, the camera out, and stick it on its side, and we'll do my mid-range, not the full quality, but high quality audio with the gimbal. So I'm going to do a bit of that. Oh, and I got a new LUT. I got some LUTs for it, so I've got like a different LUT for it now, which I'm using, which looks all right. You'll see it. I was wanting. It's a fairly sensible LUT. I was playing with like really wild things like cine camera sort of looks and things like that, but I think it was just too contrasty, too harsh. But yes, thank you, Jenna. Thank you, everybody. And the other thing is, right, you may have noticed, right, on this channel, but it's getting fixed. I have to verify my AdSense. So monetization has been stopped. I mean, the members thing's still there. That's all running. That's fine. But I don't think I can accept any new memberships yet. So if you're wondering like why I can't become a member, that's why. However, the problem will be fixed when I get my PIN number in 2 to 3 weeks. But that's all right. But it's business as usual. So we're all right. And then we'll be back on. But the members thing's still there. Just you can't take new members at the minute. But there is still AdSense. So anybody who wants to donate money, I think you can still do that. I think we can still do that. I think it just affects members and the AdSense. Something like that anyway. All right, guys. So that's enough from me. And maybe see you tonight. Bye. Did it. Right. Well, it'll be back on. Enzo. All right. Thank you. Bye.